Hello everybody, welcome to Also Rusty Buckets. If you are not subscribed already, then subscribe. About half of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed, so if you fall into that 50%, then subscribe. I'll drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. So today I'm doing hot takes yet again, but this time it is a little bit different just because since I'm still suspended on Twitter, I could not ask people there to give me their hot takes. So I decided to do this on the community tab of this channel. I might continue to do that from now on. It depends how this goes, but I got all the takes from YouTube this time around, but that's pretty much the only difference. So let's just jump into it. Neither the Lakers or Clippers will come out of the West. Yeah, I don't agree with that one. If assuming the Lakers don't have some significant drop-off due to their time where LeBron is out and the really bad period where LeBron and AD are both going to be out, I think they're still going to be fine. My pick of them being the championship team is less and less confident as time goes on with the Nets, but they're still my favorite at the moment, and I'm still rather confident that they're going to win the Western Conference. That being said, the Clippers, I definitely think they have a real shot, but then like after that, the Nuggets, the way Jokic has been playing, I say anything is possible, and Jamal Murray's picking it up a lot lately. Other than that, like the Phoenix Suns, not really. The Utah Jazz, I think, can have like an 0-4 Pistons type run, but even then I'm going to bet on the Lakers and the Clippers to beat them. But yeah, I'm still picking those two teams as the top teams in the conference to make the championship. Being drafted into a big franchise can be the worst thing to happen in a prospect's career, i.e. Lonzo. Yeah, that can be the case. It can also be the opposite of the case. Some players like thrive under those circumstances, just getting a lot of attention. I think it's a case-by-case basis, but I definitely think when a player is drafted into a very high-pressure situation, we should not be too surprised if it's not, it doesn't really work out in their favor. LeBron is the second best player on the Lakers. No. I don't think there's anything else much left to say about that one. I mean, if you watch the Lakers when LeBron is on the court and AD is off versus AD on the court and LeBron is off, it's pretty much always obvious which version of the Lakers is better. I guess we'll get a bit of a test of that for like a few weeks when it's just AD on the Lakers, but it's been my opinion for a while that like AD is I go back and forth on AD in terms of if I actually think he could be the best player on a championship team, just because I think he's just so good thriving as a second option. I don't know how he would function as the clear number one guy at the top level. So yeah, I'm definitely not going to say that AD is better than LeBron. I think in a few years that'll probably be the case as LeBron gradually declines, although the way he's going, we're not going to see any steep decline until he's like 40 years old. But definitely not saying AD is better than LeBron. Unless you're talking about Alex Caruso, which I'm sure Lakers fans will make a bunch of jokes about. But yeah, no, LeBron is still the best player on the Lakers. Chris Paul should at least be considered for MVP. The man transforms many teams that he becomes a part of. In terms of actual MVP candidacy this year, I mean, the guy averages like 14 to 16 points per game, somewhere in that ballpark. Unless you're Steve Nash, you're just not winning that MVP award under those circumstances. Though I do think Chris Paul deserves the praise that he gets lately, and I'm very glad that Chris has kind of swung more in public favor in terms of people realizing his greatness, because the last couple of years, especially with the Clippers years, like he was getting so much fucking unnecessary slander. That one play versus OKC made people decide that he was a playoff choker, even though statistically throughout his career he has elevated his game in the playoffs. And like, so many poor circumstances have prevented him from being a championship player, and it's just so ridiculous to hold that above his head like that was his fault when it's not. I'm just glad that people appreciate Chris Paul, and he's hopefully not, but probably going to retire as one of the best players of all time to never win a championship. But in terms of him actually winning MVP this year, or even being like even a top like 8 candidate, probably not going to happen. The Last Jedi is better than Revenge of the Sith. Also sub to I Don't Know Films. I don't agree with that one really. But I do think the first two prequel movies, The Last Jedi, is miles better than, because those are, in my opinion, two of the worst movies of all time. But Revenge of the Sith, the third one in the prequel trilogy, is pretty damn good. At least, especially in comparison to those fucking movies. But The Last Jedi, I'm gonna do like an hour-long review of the Disney sequel trilogy eventually. I'm working on it. By that, I mean I wrote like 2/3 of the script and then haven't touched it in months. But yeah, I do that stuff over at I Don't Know Films, or at least I plan to. I haven't posted on there in like 3 months, but I also don't want to post things on that channel when I don't feel like doing it. So yeah, go sub to I Don't Know Films, I guess. James Harden is a top 5 offensive player ever, and I don't think it's even a question. Yeah, pretty much. I agree. It's not really a question that he is in the top 5. I don't know what that top 5 is, but he's in it. And I don't even really strongly disagree with people that suggest that he's number 1. I disagree with it, but I don't strongly disagree with it. I mean, I've said before, I think Steph is the greatest offensive player of all time just because of the gravity that he has and how that impacts the offense overall outside of himself. My camera battery died, but I'm going to continue talking. But regardless, James Harden is in this conversation for sure. Now I'm going to change the camera battery. Interior defense is still more important than perimeter defense, even though three-point shooting has taken over the league. Yeah, I think the Milwaukee Bucks have proved this because their defensive scheme over the past couple of years has just been, we'll give you the threes, but you're not getting in the paint. And while there is some flaws to that defensive scheme, we've at least seen in the regular season that game plan tends to work because they've been top 5 or even top 3, I think, in defensive rating the past like 3 or so seasons. I do think there is an argument that they like way overcommit to that game plan. I watched a video by B-Ball Breakdown that was like, there's a lot of rotations they make to just completely cut off the basket that give wide open three-pointers, and it's like, you already had the basket covered, you didn't have to overcommit to that. But regardless, focusing on defense in the paint matters the most, although I think especially when you shouldn't just like strongly pick one over the other, but if you had to, then go with interior defense. But like against teams like what happened with the Bucks versus the Miami Heat, all the three-pointers that they allowed, that's not going to work, especially with how important shooting is today, as this guy mentioned. But it is definitely still preferable that you protect the paint over anything else, just because that's where the easiest shot attempts come. The subscribed amount has increased, but Rusty won't show it to keep a better narration of unsubscribed to subscribed ratio. I assume he meant narrative there. Well, on screen now is the second channel, this channel's subscribe percentage. I took a screenshot of this today, and then the second screenshot is the one of the main channel. So really, I'm really just rounding down or rounding roughly 50-50, but that's not a change. That's not a narrative I've been pushing. That's how it is. It's not a bad problem to have, because if like in actuality with people who say that, if like 90% of your views were coming from subs, that probably means your channel's dead, but it's still a good way to drive people to subscribe. So I do it. That's just how it works. The Clippers will come out of the West. Like I said earlier, I still believe the Lakers are the best team, but I do think the Clippers have a better chance this year than last year, especially with last year, I think, being more of a humbling experience on top of the personnel that they have. I think being more form fit to what the team needs. Like when you look back at like that series versus the Nuggets, for example, it was clear to me that like the narrative of like, wow, they have two of the best six men in the league, and they also have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, like, oh my god, all this scoring depth, when really Paul George and Kawhi Leonard should have been enough offense. And then it's really better to have a guy like Serge Ibaka in there in place of Montrezl Harrell, who it can still put up like 15 points whenever you need him to, but he's not like required to be that type of guy. And it's just a better fit all around, and there's less need to spread shots around. Like Montrezl Harrell, like he was just having a rough series. Some of the stuff was because of on the court stuff, so I'm not going to be too critical of him like I was back then, which I kind of regret a bit because I didn't know that at the time. But like he was just forcing so many shots. Lou Williams falls apart in the playoffs over and over. So yeah, it's definitely a better situation for the Clippers this year. I also think they're less egotistical about everything. Like they got served humble pie, and now they're ready to actually compete. I do think there's a case that they are the best team in the West. Still picking the Lakers though. If Kristaps Porzingis was not injured last year, the Mavericks would have beaten the Clippers. I'm still gonna say the Clippers win that series, but there's definitely a real argument here that the Mavericks would have won this one with Porzingis, because if I remember correctly, Porzingis was doing very well in this series on both ends of the court, really, but especially offensively, and like there was just nothing the Clippers defense was doing to stop him, as well as Luka, who was obviously going off. So the combination of those two, if that was just through a whole 7-game series, I could have definitely seen that being like enough to take the Clippers down. But I would still probably take the Clippers in that series. But this could be a case like 2017 Spurs versus Warriors, where it's like, well, if Kawhi didn't get hurt, then what happens? I mean, you can only speculate. I still think the Warriors would have won that series, by the way. But I definitely think there's a fair argument that if Porzingis wasn't hurt, then yeah, they win that series. But also, like, with how often Porzingis gets hurt, can you really use that as a what if? Because it just seems like at this point Porzingis gets hurt all the time. So it's not even really like if the sky was blue, then the Mavericks would have won the Clippers series. Or not if the sky was blue. The sky is blue. I'm so stupid. Have you noticed that? Because I've noticed that. If the sky was well, the sky can be different colors sometimes. Where am I going with this? If the sky was green, then fuck, you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, I don't know how to end this fucking video. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and that's it. Goodbye.